Hello, viewers and listeners. It's been a long time. I think it's a kind of a gap of almost a month that we are getting back on track with the second season of the AI Rising podcast. And we have a very good lineup of international speakers and, of course, a lot of local speakers to, deal with AI in much more depth than we did. Of course, the reason is very simple because there are too many developments that have been happening even in the last not only 1 year but last 1 month. And I mean, from January onwards, we have been seeing so many developments, which we are going to talk about some of them. And of course, Jayant, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you. And I mean, as
Thanks,
usual, what have you been up to in this
thanks,
last one?
Leslie. Oh, the last couple of months, good travel. In March, I was in Iceland. I was driving around the country on 4x4 SUVs. In April, I was in Italy. I was riding Harley Davidson motorcycle around the Tuscany region between Milan, Pisa, Florence, and went to Maranello. Went and saw the Ferrari museum. It was like a pilgrimage. Okay, saw the Ferrari factory. And a lot of good AI conversations in that part of the world, in Europe especially. Had a couple of very good meetings in south of Italy on AI. But yeah,
We
good
be
travel.
en- should we be envying you?
Please don't tag along next time.
Yeah, how was your Iceland trip and what exactly what was AI in Iceland doing?
Oh, okay. So here's the thing. Iceland probably was the only week where there was nothing about AI. I mean, and I was thinking I should tell Leslie that, AI is so filled up in life and around the world that you have to find the northernmost tips of the earth to, get a break from it. So that's exactly what I was thinking while I was in Iceland. So
Yeah,
Iceland had
exactly. Now
nothing
the
to do
cat
with
is out
AI.
of the bag.
We all need some break, don't we?
No, no, absolutely. I don't think anybody is going to grudge you that break from AI because I think it's been really too much. But getting back to AI, of course, there are so many developments that are happening.
Yeah,
And for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, we are just going to single out three or four things. Let's start with, of course, the elections
yeah.
because that's doing the round, and the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, has made a statement. I was just actually just looking at it. It was that he's cautioned that there could be a big incident in the next 1 month. Of course, he was referring to how the opposition has been creating conflict
Mm,
using AI. The obvious reference was to the deepfakes.
yeah.
Amit Shah's video that was doing the round. But of course, even before that, we have had a lot of
Amir Khan's, a few other actors, supporting
exactly,
parties. Yeah. The
exactly. But
deepfakes have been around, and we've been talking about it. We've been anticipating this, at the
yes.
beginning of this year in season one. We've talked about it a lot in a bunch of episodes. Uh,
And the interesting part is that here we are just dealing with deep fakes and these kind of videos, but we already have Sora that has been the Sora was released, I think, sometime in February. I'm not
February,
mistaken. And Sora has not been released to the public. It has not
not
been
yet.
made public. But China has released Vidu.ai.
Yeah.
Okay, so why do AI? So that's another interesting stuff that is there. And of course, I mean, when we speak about China, we know that there's nothing called a release date. It's out in the public and
Right.
it's for everyone to, play around with. I mean, the websites are there and it's pretty, I would say, a potent kind of tool that many people have been playing around with.
True.
My whole thing is that deepfakes are going to get very, very difficult for, the human eye to discern. I mean,
Yeah.
for most
Yeah.
humans, they'll find it extremely difficult going forward to make out what's real, what's unreal. Love your quick thoughts on that.
No, definitely deepfakes with all the video generator AI solutions coming out are going to be the norm. In some cases, even though people know it's deepfake, okay, the content quality, the richness, the drama, and the combination of all of that is going to be so entertaining and amusing that people are going to continue with it. But they are going to be the norm, and we are going to see that in our WhatsApp being shared on our WhatsApp messages, on our telegrams, on our social media and everything. It will start off on very innocuous, entertaining content, people playing around with it, but it can very soon escalate, like we've seen in some cases in the case of in the case of elections and some social events. It's at around that time when the sensitivity needs to be handled with. Okay.
Have you played around with Sora or
No,
Vidu
so
or Vidu?
Sora we couldn't. Sora I couldn't, but no, Vido also I couldn't actually.
Any
So
other tool that you have played around with, any of
on
the tools?
video generator, there are shorter video generators that I played around with. Right now, you can, if you pay close attention, you can make out, because there are some unrealistic images that are being generated by these video generators. Even the Sora demo, the video generator had people with 3 legs, horses with 5 legs, walking and stuff like that. So, but you have to pay really close attention. The entire 1 minute video is so immersive, from your senses point of view, that it's easy to miss. Okay. And when these become that many more and are being shared all across, it's the narrative, it's the visualization that will take people by their it will awe people, and that is when discerning them or not getting carried away by them becomes extremely difficult.
But Jayant, in that particular context, I have a contra view out here.
Damn.
Everybody gets extremely disturbed with Vidu, Sora, any of these video generators with deepfakes, etc. But we are okay with, sort of believing in pixies and fairies and vampires, and I will not get to the next step, exactly my pet peeve, but I will not move with that. So we are very comfortable with believing in things that have absolutely no evidence whatsoever in the scientific world. And here, when somebody generates a kind of a deep fake or a video, we get extremely disturbed because there's the personal angle. Here, it's impacting our life directly.
Yeah, no, you are getting into human psychology one-on-one and actually bordering on philosophy. I mean, all humans want to believe a narrative that their lives are led by and controlled by an entity outside of them. Okay. And we can have long discussion,
it's a sensitive topic, so
it's a sensitive topic. Okay. That's a basis of a lot of institutions that
exactly.
So that's why those narratives of fairies and everything, but you also have to understand those narratives are also passed on to you as a kid, from your family or your caregiver. So they've been you've been given the Kool-Aid very young. So
my only point over here, that over a period of time these get naturalized.
Yes.
And the impact, and people don't even realize what is real and what is unreal. They start believing that something without evidence is as real as something with a lot of evidence.
So here's the thing.
So now
let's wait another 25 years.
Exactly.
And let's think of AI native generation. Okay, exactly. The Gen Alpha, which is AI native. Let's see how their behavior, how their belief systems, are going to be when as soon as they got their senses, they're surrounded by deepfakes, just like how we have digital natives and mobile natives in the last 2 decades.
Yeah, some have been born in the metaverse, some have been born in with the internet, some have been. So I'm just saying these socio-psychological angles and the philosophical angles have to be, everybody has to take it on, because we're very, very quick on the draw when it comes to criticizing deepfakes and all. But we have to understand that generative adversarial networks, or GANs, which are the foundation for all the deepfakes, are actually the basis for a lot of good work in neural networks.
Oh, absolutely.
So a lot of stuff that has been done had, whether it's a diffusion model or whether these kind of other kind of things have been, the basis is GAN for a lot of stuff that is being done.
Yeah. And talking about it, all these video generators are going to be used by a lot of people, marketeers, advertisers, to create a good content, right? And ease their jobs. And even entrepreneurs, bootstrapping entrepreneurs can create extremely good demo videos, product videos, brand videos without taking an agency's help to start with, right? So a
We
whole
should
lot
be,
of
we should be calling one of these, one of our international experts obviously will be those that will, they will be able to shed much more light on
right.
what kind of studies have been done in this space to figure out. Because earlier, if you remember, we used to say how the internet is rewiring our brains.
Yeah.
We can talk about how deepfakes are rewiring our brains. So,
Yeah.
but that's a little, it's a long topic. So let's switch to the other one. I found the AI dogfight very interesting with the F-16s.
The DARPA released a statement saying that they did that in September last year. Yeah,
Yeah,
two
so they have been
F-16s.
doing it for, I mean, the dogfight is not something new because that's a thing that the defense forces have been doing regularly. But with the F-16, I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty interesting. And of course, if you notice, the interesting part is that DARPA has not released the result of
No.
who
Yeah.
won the
It did
fight.
not release the result
It
of
is not.
who won, and the XA-62, the Vista aircraft F-16, it had two pilots, by the way, ready to go for the kill switch if something went wrong. But I
Is that
thought
human in the loop?
it had human in the loop, exactly, right? But I thought it was very interesting considering they were at 1200 miles per hour. Flying at 1200 miles per hour came as close to 2000 feet. I think it's a good research experiment, and that's as close aircraft can get in a dogfight, because after that the missiles can take over very easily.
Yeah,
You,
and
you
these are
get
fighter
logs on.
planes. I mean,
Yeah,
look at
these
these
are
are
these
like
are F-16s.
supersonic. Yeah.
These are F-16s. So that was very interesting. And around the same time, we have our
No, but
autonomous racing league
I,
in
I knew you would come to that. So before that, just a couple of points for our viewers and listeners is, of course, they could have watched the movie Stealth.
yeah,
In Stealth, there was actually a kind of a dogfight that you would have
correct.
said, and of course, there, of course, you had the AI plane. So it's a movie worth watching. It will give our viewers and listeners some idea of how what happens when you have AI in a plane. And the other aside is that the first autonomous airplanes have always been on autopilot. It was the first one was done in 1912. I had written
Right,
about this earlier also, and many have written
right.
about this. So I think aviation industry as such has always been, in fact, driverless cars and all have learned a lot from the aviation
True.
industry. So that's something very interesting. And now, of course, we can get back to your favorite topic, which is the driverless car
before
race.
before getting there, I'd like to make a point that everything that we are witnessing, and for the foreseeable future, and when I say foreseeable future, over the next year or two that will witness happen in AI, we'll have some or other Hollywood movie, to draw parallel with, and some or other Hollywood movie would have showcased this. Okay, while in Italy, I was speaking to the former head of Carabinieri, which is the entire Italian police force, and talking about AI adoption there, and he was talking about predicting, crimes, and similar to Minority Report, right? So I think for the next year or two, everything that we'll see AI will achieve. Some we can, relate it to some or other Hollywood movie that's portrayed it.
But Jayant, it cuts both ways, isn't it? Sci-fi movies take the inspiration from the real world. Real
Right.
world movies take, and then of course there are people like Arthur C. Clarke and other kind of writers, whether it's I think Michael Crichton.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean one of those sci-fi writers who are my favorites, who take it to the next level by talking about swarms and this, and then of course those novels are converted into sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
And even if you watch movies like Harry Potter and any of these magical series,
Fantasy
fantasy kind
movies.
of movies, we call them fantasy, but your deep fakes and all will come in those. See, I'm saying the borderline is it's a very thin borderline, where the real ends and where the unreal starts.
Unreal
Something
starts.
to really think about. But of course, now getting back to your favorite topic of driverless cars, you had the Abu Dhabi Autonomous Racing League, the
League.
A2RL that took
A2RL.
place on the Yas Marina Abu Dhabi
Formula One circuit.
Grand Prix Formula track. That I think it took. I was just reading somewhere it was $1.3 billion to make that track.
Yeah.
The track.
All Formula One circuits are over $1 billion to be designed, and Abu Dhabi is a night race, so they have a whole bunch of lights as well. That that also adds to the cost.
So I know there was a lot of confusion on those tracks with many of the driverless cars running
Yeah.
amok, and but I thought it was an interesting thing. So you tell our viewers and listeners
Yeah,
about it.
I mean, obviously the race itself was not exciting, okay? Because again, formula races are all about drama and they're all about human instinct in the microsecond what they pulled off. I mean, if anyone saw the Chinese Grand Prix last year, the way Alonso saved on the corner going off the circuit, and he's 42 years old. Okay, that was considered one of the best saves, in Formula One at that speed. These autonomous cars obviously don't have yet, okay, let me put it this way, don't yet have that kind of speeds drama, or going into the apex corner and coming out with acceleration, or somewhere going up in smoke. One lost the signal
I
to
found
the
it
AI,
very
and
tame. Found it
yeah,
a very tame race kind of stuff.
it's extremely tame. It wasn't a race. It was hardly a race.
Yeah, it was
One
hard.
one car lost the signal to AI and it stopped in the middle of the race, and all other cars stopped behind it. It wasn't a race.
I remember
But
that Chinese, one of those, I mean, there were different teams of students and
correct.
faculty members and etc. I think there was one team from China. I think their
Yes.
driverless cars were running around like a drunk, as if there was a drunk driver sitting over there. It was swerving
Headless,
all.
headless drunk chicken.
Yeah, it was actually all twists and turns. It was very amusing watching it.
But yeah, but Leslie, you have to understand this is AI, and we've all seen how fast once some of these things have come out of the woods, how fast they develop. I mean, we've seen that in chatbots, we've seen that in every other solutions, we've seen LLMs evolving extremely fast. So
Not happened in the
autonomous
case of
formula.
driverless. Not
Sorry.
happened in the case of driverless cars, but
Yeah, not happened in case of driverless cars. Also, autonomous formula level racing on circuits like Yas Marina, Formula One circuit and all. I think it will take some time to get the drama as close to formula racing. I mean, if you see the Yas Marina, the grandstand was barely full, let alone any other stands, even the grandstand was barely full. I think I read somewhere the number of people watching it online were 600,000 people, less than a million. And the comments were, very different. People were bored. But yeah, also have to understand that these are motorsport enthusiasts who've been watching Formula One races, Formula Two and Formula E races, okay, driven by humans for many years, coming and watching this, because it was not an autonomous race that they're watching. They were watching a formula race by an AI, right? So their expectation of what to expect from this race was, pretty close to a formula motorsport race, right?
yeah, because again, we come back to the same question. If you watch a sci-fi movie and then you actually watch it in real life, you're going to be disappointed
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the expectation level that we have, great expectations, as Charles Dickens would
right,
say.
right.
And when you actually get onto the field, you find, okay, oh, these expectations aren't
No,
being.
but I strongly believe if the investment continues in a couple of years, we are going to see extremely interesting uh, fully autonomous AI formula racing
And I
in
think
about 2 to 3 years
the
time frame.
purpose of this autonomous race was also something it was different. I
Yeah.
think they wanted to establish how, the safety in cars, how,
Yes.
etc. So that is something that you probably could share with our viewers and listeners.
Correct. I mean, the objective was also that, first of all, autonomous cars slowly but surely are making their way. I mean, in San Francisco,
Yeah,
Waymos and
already.
people are flagging down the Jaguars, which are driven by Waymos and using them as cabs. So autonomous cars are slowly but surely in different parts of the world, in different pockets for specific use cases, are making their way into public life. And again, Abu Dhabi and the Middle East being one of the regions which is right now heavily investing in AI as a technology and AI technology based solutions. Whichever is right out of the woods, they want it on their roads. So this one of the objectives, or one of the key objectives of this race, was also to showcase to the public of Abu Dhabi that the autonomous cars, their protocols, essentially their safety and security protocols, okay, even in a race scenario, okay, will be adhered, wherein they wanted to showcase that safety and security comes first, and the cars are not bumping into each other. I think it's just one car which ran into the other, but
Yeah, I mean, the Middle East is actually throwing a lot of money at AI.
oh,
Because,
loads of
I
money.
think about a year back, I went for one of these conferences. I met they have a minister for AI, a
Yes,
dedicated
yeah,
minister for AI for the entire
yes,
UAE. And of course, Saudi Arabia, as you know, has also Sophia, first
right,
citizen of Saudi Arabia. So the Middle East as such, whether it's the UAE, whether it's Saudi Arabia and other countries also, they're at the forefront of it. And I remember having this conversation with the Minister of AI, a very interesting stuff, where he spoke about a driverless metro. Now,
mm,
he was telling me that we have the driverless metro, and for 6 months, they kept a human being, a human pilot or the human driver in the
in the cockpit,
cockpit,
yeah,
just to give people
kills.
the comfort level that there is a human in the loop. Else
Okay,
he's saying there was no need for that because it was a very, and the human was doing nothing.
yeah,
He
it
just
was
standing
fully
over, just
autonomous.
waiting.
It was
Exactly.
fully.
So,
Leslie, a year back, Falcon LLM was leading this one, and Falcon comes from the Middle East. And we also discussed this, I think, in one of the episodes in season one. I mean, Middle East has also seen a lot of Eastern European and Chinese AI talent come in, post COVID, and started working on all things, AI in Middle East. So you're right; they're not just throwing the money; they have uh, they have the talent available right now as well.
of course, before we wind up, of course, we have to talk about another major development that has been happening in this field, and that is about, uh, so I've actually written, I just wrote about it in my Mint Tech Talk, the newsletter that comes out every week. So it is about again, one of our favorite topics, the small language models.
SLMs.
SLMs. Now, the interesting part is two things. I'm a fan of E.F. Schumacher, who wrote this book in economics called Small is Beautiful. I mean, that I think he wrote it way back in 1973 or something like that. Yeah, it was 73. And the title of that book was Small is Beautiful, a study of economics as if people mattered. So I
Interesting.
found it extremely interesting. And
Yeah.
then if you look at SLMs and the way things have been going on, uh, I always found it pretty interesting from that point of view that when you see that on 18th April, I mean, in April itself, we had about 3 or 4 launches. So in April,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Meta released
Within a week. Within a week.
Llama 3, I think with 8 billion and 70 billion parameters.
Parameters.
And then it had 15, it was pre-trained on 15 trillion
Yeah,
tokens.
tokens, yeah.
So I found that pretty interesting. Of course, then you had Microsoft Phi 3 with 3.8 billion
By 3 mini.
parameters. And it was yeah, you're right. It was the Phi 3 mini because the Phi 3 medium is 14 billion parameters. And then, of course, to top it all, you had Apple with its Open ELM series. Now,
Right.
I personally am not too familiar with what happened. I know that Open ELM series, etc., has been there, but I'm not an Apple user, so maybe my enthusiasm isn't as much as for the other. But what I liked very much about the ELM series,
ELM.
about Microsoft, the Phi 3 and Llama 3, and of course Claude and all the other kind of models that are happening. One, of course, is that they're small language models, very effective language models that can be customized and fine-tuned for very domain-specific purposes,
Right.
and the fact that they are open source.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there is the definition and redefinition of what is exactly the open source. But the point is that all these companies, including Apple, are now veering towards open source models. This is despite the resistance that you had in the US. If you remember, in the US, they're trying to
Right.
clamp down on open source models.
Yes. I mean,
So,
last week, US set up an AI, the US government set up an AI board, and both Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, who are the big proponents of open source AI, have been left out of that, board.
yeah, but I
Very
think
interesting.
the horse has already bolted out of the
Yeah.
stable. So I
Yeah.
don't think there's any, I think there'll be quite a backlash if,
Yeah. No,
if they try to.
getting back to our SLMs, what was extremely interesting for me, and we both of us were talking about it last week. We were testing this together. Was that we were able to test Llama 3 offline on our MacBooks or on our PCs with CPUs without a GPU. So now building at least assistant like generative AI solutions without the dependence on heavy compute and GPUs is now becoming possible. And 5.3 Mini is actually developed to work on your mobile devices. So edge AI computing, SLMs working offline without the need for GPU. And the GPU cloud providers are struggling to rent out GPUs at $2 per hour per GPU, right? People who have hoarded NVIDIA H100 GPUs are struggling. But we knew this would happen. I mean, last year we were talking about it and people laughed us out of the room. But we said this was a progression, logical progression of how technology would evolve. But what is very interesting for me is that the training of both these SLMs and the upcoming SLMs, the data that is being passed to train these, that has been extremely, minutely looked at, and in a granular level, extremely clean and relevant data. Okay, that is interesting. Now, even the open source language models that are being trained on, the data that is being used, okay, is extremely clean and relevant. And that is making the difference in some of these, models which are 3.8 billion or even, 7 billion parameters, almost perform pretty close to the GPT 3.5, performance levels. And we are seeing those kind of performance levels. So I think it's the logical progression. In my mind, we would have reached this by the end of H1 of 2024. I think we are a quarter early, and that was my optimistic estimate at the beginning of this year. I think we are still a quarter early, and that for me is a huge milestone.
Yeah, I think, and a simple way to understand it, I mean, for viewers and listeners who are not sort of, very familiar with what is the difference between an LLM, LMM, a large multimodal
Multimodal
language, and the
models.
SLMs. And you have a lot of confusion over these kind of terms. But the interest, I think, a simple way to understand it that large language models have been trained on humongous amounts of data. That means whether it is 1.5 trillion, which has not been publicly thrown at figure, or whether you even talk of 175 billion parameter GPT-3 or GPT-4, which, as I said, it could be 1.5 trillion. It could be anything for that matter of fact. But I think the more important thing is that the smaller language models can be customized, can be fine-tuned for, to suit a specific task, and, for specific, like it could be for medical data to outperform they can, if they're trained on medical data, they can outperform a general purpose LLM.
Yeah.
As simple as that. But like I was also recently, I wrote about how Larsen and Toubro is using LLMs for very specific purposes, for contracts, for this, for legal
Right.
tender, etc. And there are a lot of banks in India, for that matter of fact, are using these smaller language models. Whether you call them SLMs, whether you call them layered over LLMs, or you call them fine-tuned LLMs, I think it's immaterial at
Or
this.
vertical LLMs
Vertical
or
LLMs. I think, yeah,
vertical LLMs.
that would be a better word.
Yeah.
And of course, they have their disadvantages also. Maybe because from the reasoning point of view, from contextual point of view, from generating complex language patterns. But then at the same time, I think these disadvantages, to the best of my knowledge, are not really pertinent to many of these SLM, because you're using a vertical
Exactly.
LLM or a vertical SLM, or whatever you want to call it.
And beyond a point, especially in enterprise scenario, they're anyway trained on the enterprise specific data, and they're ragged anyways. Anyway,
Exactly the point. So I think the point with I concluded this entire thing was that it is not going to be, an LLM versus SLM debate, because I think SLM is a derivative from that
Yes,
matter. In fact,
yes.
it's a little naive and silly to have, have this kind of discussion
It
on
is a
that.
more synthesized, high signal to noise ratio version of an LLM any which ways. And
Exactly.
it was supposed to be a logical progression and an eventuality any which ways.
And just as we had the hybrid cloud approach where you used on-premise data in a public cloud, you'll end up using an LLM, you'll be using an SLM, and you'll be using some kind of hybrid model which combines both of these. This is exactly what's going to happen. And of course, like you had multi-cloud vendors, you're going to have something like that.
Right.
Where you may host it on an AWS or you may host it on an Azure. You may want to put your eggs in very different baskets
True.
and have fun around that. But yes, SLMs are here to stay. Open source is here to stay. Large language models, I mean, from the computing power, many people are going to question how many more do you need? And there's going to be a lot more regulations
True.
around that. So we are here for interesting times. And of course, we'll be discussing more of these topics in the next podcast. So for now, it's all from my side. What about you, Jayant? Anything you want to add?
Welcome back to season 2, and love to have many more interesting conversations with you and many of our guests from around the world.